His legal name is Robert Rides at the Doore, Native American from the Blackfeet tribe in Browning, Montana. Now, he's known as Robert Doore, the name shortened, as he says, to compete in mainstream society. Robert grew up with a passion for sports. His personal motto: drive, determination, and desire. He excelled in sports while in high school. In the middle of 5 children, Doore embraced competition. They all competed, including his uncle, Doug Davis, who played on Montana State's 1984 National Championship football team. Ultimately, it was education and not the playing field that was the bridge to a career in the NFL. After graduating from Blackfeet Community College, Doore continued his education at the University of Mary in North Dakota, earning a master's degree in business administration. In 2014, Doore achieved a lifelong goal, and that was to work in the NFL, where he was hired by Washington to become the director of guest experiences with the franchise. While there, Doore's primary job was to give fans the best possible game day experience, managing a staff of 5,000 employees. His position gave him a voice to educate and promote Native American culture and history. To this day, Doore is the highest-ranking Native American to work in the NFL since Jim Thorpe, who resides in Canton, Ohio, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Last year, Doore left Washington, moved to Denver, where he is currently the president and CEO of Chief Mountain Sports and Consulting. Among the clients he represents, Marathon Petroleum, a Fortune 500 company. His work continues to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DE&I. Robert is never too far away from his home in Browning. Each year, he hands out 4 college scholarships for students from Hart Butte and Browning. Robert Doore, 2022 inductee to the Montana Pro Football Hall of Fame.
That's fantastic. That guy's pretty cool. Hello, friends. I'm so excited to be here. If you're here for that, you have hard work and dedication, you can do anything, that's in the other ballroom. Sorry. But hopefully get a chance to take a few minutes with me and take a journey from the reservation to the NFL. Sometimes we know our glory, but we don't know our story. I'm going to take a raw, hardcore approach, let you in behind the velvet rope of who I am, who my family is today, and hopefully you can pick up some nuggets. And I want to start with the beginning. There's 3 individuals that influenced my life in the beginning. Bright Path, or you may know him as Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe was one of the greatest athletes of our time. He was highly influential. When I researched Jim Thorpe, I discovered he went to Carlisle Indian School, played for the fabulous Redmen under Pop Warner. And he was the largest draw at the time. And some of you may not know this, but he was the reason that the Pro Football Hall of Fame is in Canton, Ohio, because he signed with the Canton Bulldogs. He also was the first president of the National Football League and co-founder. So when you're watching the Super Bowl or you're having Thanksgiving dinner watching football, remember, it was a Native American that started this league. It wasn't until 100 years later that I rose to be the highest-ranking Native American in pro football. Thank you. You know, I didn't set out to be the first or the best of anything. I just wanted best first Indian or best anything. I just wanted to be the best I could be. The second person is Chief Two Guns Whitecalf. He was an ambassador for our tribe from here to D.C. He was good-looking, very photogenic, and he was the model for the Indian Head Nickel. And when I discovered he was the model for the Washington Redskins, the most powerful city in the world, football team, man, I was sold. That was my superpower. I was so proud of that. I was a Redskin fan since I was 4 years old. And the final one up there is the original Rides at the Doore. My name is Robert Rides at the Doore. You may know me as Robert Doore. You see, with Native Americans, we get a name at birth. Jim Thorpe was Bright Path. My grandfather, he was Stomach Sukin. He was a great communicator. He was a translator. He talked a lot. Ironically, his grandson is giving a TED Talk today. So, in our ways, you get another name by a noble deed. Maybe you count coup. He decided he was going to go on a war party to the enemy camp. And back then, we used to tie our best horses to the front door of our teepee or lodge, kind of like valet parking, right? And Grandpa went down with his war party. He jumped on his horse in the middle of the Crow camp. He counted coup, and he took off on this horse. He took off riding on this horse, and 2 braves followed him. And he's going, and he ends up going over a cliff. And these braves were following him, and he falls off the horse into a brush. And by the time the braves got over and looked over the cliff, a rabbit had emerged from the bush. And those 2 braves looked at each other, and they said, that one's a shapeshifter. He's got good medicine. We're just going to write that horse off. So he gets back. He tells the story to the elders about his noble deed, counting coup. And they said, from this day forward, he will be known as Ituxtatupi, he who rides the best horse from the enemy's door, which became rides at the door in translation. Fast forward a couple generations later to my Grandpa Roy, very personal, gentleman, businessman, communicator, managed to blend both worlds. He faced adversity with his business, and he made one minor tweak. He changed our name to Doore and added an E at the end. Now, this was before the internet, and suddenly that adversity went away. Calls were accepted, credit was approved, obstacles were removed. He was able to figure out how we maneuvered through both worlds. Fast forward to his grandson, Bobby Doore, this young curly-headed boy from the reservation, dreamer. I could bore you with all the details of how 10 of us lived in a HUD home, a 2-bedroom, no sheetrock. I'm going to do that. I was a dreamer, but I had one superpower, one of many superpowers, and the one was family. Like many of you here, family. Family to all of us is not only our immediate family, it's our extended family, it's our community, it's our tribe, it's our state, right? I was fortunate to be raised by 2 parents that were loving and instilled values inside of me. But one thing that important to our story is they exposed me to the world. They were coaches and founders of a running team, an AAU running team. And they took us, a bunch of Indian kids from the reservation, to places like Sacramento, LA, DC, Philadelphia. And one day on one of those trips, I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, what is that? He goes, what are you talking about? I said, that guy with all the fancy clothes on. He goes, that's a businessman, son. I said, well, I want to be that. You see, there's a few ways that I understood you could achieve success or get off the reservation. You get education, you work for the government, maybe join the military. Well, being the contrarian that I was, that challenged everything, I wanted to be a corporate executive. I wanted to make it to the NFL. I wanted to make it to pro sports. Dad, how do we do that? He says, well, you got to be educated. You got to treat people well. You got to communicate. And here's the one. You got to learn to look like and talk like that guy on the news on TV. Okay. So here I go. Off to college. Let's get that education. In college, it was kind of interesting because I came from the reservation where all of us were dark. All of us looked like each other. Representation is huge. When you go on to college, for me, it was just an eye-opening experience because I now became the chocolate chip of the snowbank. Nobody looked like me, right? And it was there in college that I experienced imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, if you don't know, is that you get into an environment where you don't feel like you should belong. You don't feel like you deserve to be there. Maybe you're even selling out your own people. I had to process stuff like that. But I had a goal in mind, right? The longer goal was to be that executive. Then 2 months into my college career and experienced the greatest time of my life, I get a call. It said, Robert, your brother's dead. Murdered and shot back home. You see, grief is tough. Grief is heavy. Spoiler alert. We're all going to experience it. But we hold on to those that are dear to us. The thing about death that I couldn't process was that our conversations, our dreams, the stuff we talked about, were gone. That dark time was hard, was heavy. So I tried to go back to school, and I was struggling. I was struggling in college, and I asked my advisor, I said, what do I do? He says, you know what? Go home, Indian. That's what you guys do. Go be a drunk. That's what you guys do. No, the statistics are against you. It's okay. So I did. I went home to the core, to my superpower. He thought I quit. Maybe the world and the statistics thought I quit. I pressed reset. And I had a conversation with my superpowers, the elders, my grandma. I called her my Gam. And she goes, Bobby Doore, what are you doing home? And I said, Gam, I can't do it. I can't do it. She says, Bobby Doore, I'm going to tell you something. Don't waste the miracle. You come from a compilation of survivors. It's in your DNA. It's in here. You owe it to them to go forward. See, the buffalo is the only animal that goes into the storm to get through the storm. That's what my grandma was. Took one match. I could feel it starting again. I could feel it starting again. I said, Gram, what's a warrior look like today? She said, Bobby, a warrior can wear a suit and tie, go to D.C., compete at the highest level. Come back. Sing our songs. Practice our ways. Recharge on your superpowers. In here. And wherever you go, you'll always be an Indian. That's what a warrior is today. So here we go. Grandma launched me in the stratosphere. I go out. I enroll in a tribal college. I'm a proud tribal college alumni. I go on to get a master's degree. I began to use my other superpowers, which were people, which were influence. I was a great communicator. I was learning how to talk like that man on the 5 o'clock news. I built a business. I built an empire. I made my first million at 26 years old. How did I do that? I get that question a lot. It was influence. It was treating people with respect. It was treating people with proper communication. It was engagement. It was understanding their story and relating it to mine, finding that intersectionality. That was the key to my success. It wasn't without challenge, though. You see, you hear about cancel culture. Sometimes imposter syndrome will cancel you. If you're not careful, you can cancel yourself. But I want to tell you a story. I was a licensed lobbyist. And I called this lawmaker to set up a meeting. He welcomed me into his office. He says, "You're Robert Doore?" I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He goes, "But you sound like a white guy on the phone." It was that moment, along with many, where we live in a cancel culture, but I choose to live in a coachable culture. See, I believe in society we should be moving from a cancel culture where I could chastise this guy up and down, or I can teach him, educate him against the ignorance. And that's the goal. We all can learn together. Fast forward, that lawmaker is a dear friend of mine, very powerful lawmaker, by the way. But we learn together. It's the impact that we seek. It's that connection that we seek. So then the phone rings, right? Fast forward. Let's get to the meat of this thing. My team called. Man, how many in here are football fans? How many here watch football? Come on. And you know in your heart of hearts, there's these affirmations my entire life. I was a Redskins fan. When they called, we'd like to talk to you. We heard your name through 5 or 6 individuals, relationships, network. How did you make it to the NFL? It's who you know. You seek those opportunities, right? So I did what any intelligent man would do. Guys, listen up. I asked my wife, "Babe, guess what? Redskins called, and they want to talk to me. She's like, oh, that's great. Can you grab some butter and some sugar on the way home and take out the trash? She didn't believe it. But the other part of that conversation, after we were able to negotiate terms, and they hired me based on my qualifications, my wife said, no, we've got to find life here. We've got priorities for a variety of reasons. We shouldn't do this. But if you've ever had a dream that only you and God know, in here, that gut, that instinct, that's telling you something. That is real. And I knew in my heart of hearts it wasn't about me. I could use this for generational impact. This could launch us into a whole other stratosphere. But success comes with sacrifice. And I made the choice to go out to D.C. and take this job on my own. I went out there without my family, went against everything we were told. Your family is everything, right? I was out there for a full year, sacrificing, decided to surprise my son, and I thought we were going to make an internet video. He was going to be he would not let me go. He would not let me go. So fast forward, life in the NFL. Here I am. I get to share this experience with the world, with my family. I land in D.C., and I'm able to impact lives. But I want to tell you stuff about the NFL. 90% of what happens in the NFL is hard work. It's awful. It's 7 days a week. It is 12 to 15-hour days, 10 months out of the year. See, because you move from the games, the season, to concerts, to off-season OTAs, to training camp. And I was responsible for all that. My family eventually would join me in D.C., and I was able to share the experience with my family, my mom and dad, and go to our first game. And that was the impact. That's the impact. That was the start of it. 10% of it, though, one of 32 jobs in the world, that's my job? That was so exciting. You got to do some wonderful things. You got to meet movie stars. You got to meet childhood heroes. I got to share the games with my family. I got to share it with other people. I got to share experiences with little reservation kids from across the country that never got to go to, maybe didn't leave the reservation. I got to share that with them. And that little boy that I broke his heart, he walks into a stadium at his age, at my age, when I was his age, I was worried about shoes. I didn't have a lot. But my son walks into a stadium, my kids walk into a stadium or a corporation, they said, I could run this place because my dad did it. That's the generational impact. That's how we measure up. And that's what I shot for. Sharing these experiences was one thing, but a couple other things that I'm really proud of in my accomplishments in the NFL. My relationships with people and fans. I was a fan first. When I first got into the league, I remember that first day I was floating. I was floating all day long. I probably didn't sleep the night before. Stadium was packed, but I chose to create an experience for all the fans that came there. See, because I would ask staff, I would ask them, I would ask people that came to their first game, I would say, what's your first game? What's the most memorable thing about your first game? You know what they'd say? I don't remember who was playing, but I remember who I was with. So it was our job to give the fans the best experience, and I tried to do that as a fan. The other thing was my relationship with staff. 5,000 staff. I did management by walking around. I would walk around at 40,000 steps a game. I wanted to learn everybody's name, 5,000 people's names. See, because I asked staff, they had to make sure the people had a great time at the stadium, right? But the people that were taking care of the people, they could be having a bad day. Maybe it was a single mother. Maybe it was a guy who got a flat on the way. I asked them to bring it positively every day. You have to understand somebody's story. Take care of the people that take care of the people. I recognized our staff on the stadium on the big board for the first time ever. And by the time I left, there wasn't a dry eye in that building because the connection I had with staff and fans. Think about that for a second. Think about the connection that you have with maybe coaches, with maybe managers. Sports parallels life. I personally have gone farther because of my connection and conviction with a teacher. You can literally coach a kid out of a sport. You can literally manage a person out of a department or even a company. But you can also motivate a kid to go further than he's ever gone before. You can motivate a staff to go higher and lead a corporation by just understanding their story and finding out what motivates them. Don't focus on it. If you're meeting with your manager, which I do a lot, focus on the 10 positive things, not the one thing that you need to work on. Lean into your strength. Lean into your superpowers. The final thing was my sharing of my culture. I used the platform of the NFL and all it stood for to share the culture of our people. I still get chills. For the first time, we flew tribal colors in a stadium, in an NFL stadium. For the first time, we sang tribal songs. And hearing those songs echo off those stadium walls brings me to tears. And I'm so excited today that it lit a flame, that you're seeing it across the country in pro sports. You're seeing it across the country in college football, college basketball. In fact, the Superbowl in Phoenix had a huge Native American flair. We played a role in that. So here we are, fourth quarter. Going back to the core, what's important? As time starts to wind down, I remember thinking, my son, I missed so many games. My daughter, I missed so many games, plays, the sacrifices. My favorite part of the NFL was when I was in the stadium packed. Towards the end of my career, the night before a game, I'd sit there by myself and I'd reflect. I think about all those mentors. I think about the trials, the tribulations, the sacrifices my parents made, my grandmother's teachings, all of it, all the compilations of people and sacrifice that it took to get here. Then I realized it was time, so I'm sitting on the upper concourse at the stadium, and I knew this was my last season. And I looked out over the stadium, and I saw mountains. There were other mountains to move. There were other mountains to climb. And there are other people we can impact. So I challenge you this. God gave us all a gift. God gave us superpowers. He also gave you the pen to be the greatest author of your story.